tonight, I'm assuming that game will be available to you not only on the Timberwolves channel via iHeart and the iHeart app, but via FM 100.3 The Fan. Is that correct?
Following a very special edition of the Parker Fox pregame show
Even
again
better.
at 7 o'clock.
That's outstanding. We do expect Anthony Edwards to play again. We'll talk about the possibility of a minute's restriction for the second straight game. Ayo Dosunmu also is available for the first time since, what was his last game? Game 5? Did he play Game 5 in the Denver series? He was terrific in Games 3 and 4 in that series. I don't remember if he played 5.
I think he played 5, but was a late scratch for 6.
He did not play at all in 6, and obviously did not play in Game 1. Somebody can help us through all of this. I've been with us before on this program, a name probably pretty familiar to lots of Wolves fans, Dr. Robby Sikka, who is the founder and CEO of Sports Medicine Analytics Research Team. You can do the short version of that, SMART. And, of course, once upon a time, not that long ago, was VP of Player Health and Operations for the Minnesota Timberwolves as well. And he joins us via the Connecticut Water Systems hotline. Robbie, how have you been?
Doing well, Dan. Thanks for having me. It was nice to catch up with Guardsy, too.
It's a great opportunity for us, and because you can answer some of the questions we muse about often, and some of them directly related to some of the Wolves' injury issues. Now, my understanding, too, is there's a nice video going around that sort of attempted to lay out the Anthony Edwards injury, most recent injury, the other knee, so to speak, and then really his sequencing since then to try to get in position to come back quicker than certainly the original estimations. So before we get into some of the weeds there, when a team declares, okay, it's week to week, or if the word seems to get out, he might be able to play late in the second series against the Spurs, but realistically not before. Do they always mean it, or is that just part of the approach of we'll play it conservatively, knowing we might end up being pleasantly surprised? What goes into all of that discussion?
There's a lot of discussions with the front office. There's discussions with the agent. There's discussions with the player. And there's also rules that you have to disclose things from a competitive perspective by a certain time. We know that the NBA and any sports league is going to have rules. In this case, the unique thing is you have a player who's super competitive. He wants to play. He wants to do everything he can to be on the court. You don't always have that. You have a lot of players who are out there who are trying to be conservative. There might be other factors in play. Mm-hmm. But with Anthony, the goal is the kid just wants to play. Like, the guy is just driven to be out there. So it really starts with the conversation with the player. That's really, really important, because you're taking where is he and how is he feeling, and then saying, what are you willing to do to get out there? And he's willing to do anything and everything.
Has he always been that ready? Is that part of the maturation process with him? What's your own experience in that sense?
I was there for his first draft workout in L.A., and we wanted to put him in a situation where we wanted to see what is he capable of when he's tired. So we had him run basically the equivalent of the NFL 40. There's an NBA 3/4 court sprint, and we had him run that at the end of his workout, which is kind of a mean thing to do, but we want to see, hey, what does this guy have inside to deliver when he's tired? And he was the fastest player in the NBA at the end of the workout.
Wow.
That's something that's not normal. So you're like, even when somebody's gassed, he's got something inside of him.
So when you say he's got something inside of him, is he different because of the drive, or is it physiological? I mean, with some players more than others. What defines, what explains why he's different?
With him, I think there's a physiological component because he's strong. He has an explosiveness that is generational that not every athlete has. But there's also a want to, and there's a competitiveness that, as I was talking to Guardsy before, I said, this is the type of athlete who, it's rare that I would say this because, when I was growing up in town and when I really started spending time in sports medicine, Randy Moss was the greatest athlete in this community. And he has the athleticism of Moss, He has the competitiveness of KG and the charisma of Kirby Puckett, all in one. And you need all three to be able to lift yourself up or have others lift you up or you lift others up in that moment. And so I say this, with all due respect to all three of those athletes. This guy has all three of those factors. And Ricky Rubio told me in his rookie year, this kid's the best leader I've been around. And Ricky's been around a lot of good leaders. So when Ricky tells me that, I take it seriously because I also thought Ricky was a really good leader too.
Very observant young man, that's for sure. Ricky Rubio. We could spend another whole segment on, the injury that derailed his career and how things might have been different in that regard too. So here's what's interesting to me. We talked about this before the series began, before we got the word that indeed he's upgraded to questionable and there's a good chance he's going to play. And I think I frustrated some fans with the discussion because they took what I was saying as me saying the Wolves are being reckless if they play him. And I really didn't mean, it wasn't that for me. That wasn't the what I was trying to imply. What I was trying to say is these are big decisions that everybody's got to, think about the short-term and long-term ramifications, because for people who feel the same way you do about Anthony Edwards, he's an investment, and he's not just the present in Minnesota. He is the future as well. And there have been occasions in NBA history, we talked about probably the most famous one, where Tim Duncan got hurt late in the 2000 season, and he got cleared medically, was ready to play in the playoffs, and Greg Popovich shut him down. And his thinking at the time was, I want to... as a coach, if I don't screw this up, we can win a lot of titles with this guy. And so I'm going to be more cautious. The Spurs did get eliminated, I think, pretty early in the playoffs that year. We'll never know what might have happened if he had played. But the moral of the story was I think Duncan played another 13, 14 years. And it's just a reminder, not all injuries are the same, but these are momentous decisions and all of these factors to me, absolutely, teams are obligated to include them, even if ultimately they tell the player, like Anthony, who wants to go, that they don't really think he should go. How do you talk about that, or give us your sense of that perspective? Because to me, it's really important.
Look, your points are outstanding because it's a conversation. And we can have all the data in the world. I'm a data-driven person. I have an AI company and a data company that tries to use data to help guide these decisions. But I think it's really important as a physician. I think about this a lot. As opposed to just telling people, hey, here's what we're going to do, I try and ask questions. And it's the thing that I've advocated and told to Anthony as well. Ask questions. Be thoughtful and ask why. We know that, if it's game 7 and you're Tyrese Halliburton last year and you're trying to play and you're coming off a calf strain, hard to say don't play in that situation. But you got to ask questions to understand, hey, what are you willing to do? What are the risks? And if Anthony asks those questions, he's thoughtful enough and he's intelligent enough to interpret those responses relative to him. I mean, I think he's very thoughtful and increasingly curious about injuries. And I know he's asked other athletes in town who've gone through hamstring injuries and knee injuries. He's asked them, what do you do? What should I eat? How much should I sleep? Those are the types of things that when you're curious, that's ultimately what drove people like Kobe Bryant. Yeah. The great athletes are curious. The best athletes ask questions, and that's what he's doing. I think that's what the team is doing as well, and I give them a lot of credit for not trying to be boxed in, but then saying, hey, what can we do to protect him out there? What can we do to make sure that he can perform out there? This is where it goes into one of the other points you made about minute restrictions. What do those ultimately do? Do they actually work in that regard?
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a fair question. Like when we were chatting about his condition, you're the doctor. I'm not, but my gut thought was, okay, he's got now issues with both knees. Neither of those issues allegedly are structural, which I assume is important in when you're evaluating and thinking about how to go forward. But the layman, I think, is likely to say, well, but if both knees are, if he's still recovering from two different injuries or conditions in both knees, does that make him potentially more vulnerable to something more catastrophic? Is that a fair question, or does that have actually nothing to do with whether you say yay and nay as a doctor to Anthony Edwards coming back to play when he did?
Those are absolutely the right questions. And it goes back to, are you at risk for another knee injury? Sure. Are you at risk for an Achilles injury or a quad injury or something else? Absolutely. So how do we take the highest risk scenario or the highest risk aspect to this? Like, for example, in football, I might think, hey, special teams plays are the highest risk plays, or certain things are the highest risk. Can we mitigate that? Can we take that part off the table? Can we optimize that? How do we get a rhythm for someone like Anthony Edwards? How many minutes does he need to play to actually kind of get into a flow? Do we need to use our timeouts a little bit more liberally? These are the types of things that, as you're trying to then insert it into a game plan, well, how do you deal with foul trouble? How do you account for an overtime scenario? It's a long story that I can give you another time about Ryan Saunders and I talking about that in real time with a minute restriction we had on a player. And then the thing that really speaks to, again, Anthony and his progression. For the fans out there, I don't know if you noticed this, but he actually was gesturing towards Coach Finch during the game. Hey, I'm good.
Yes.
I'm feeling okay. And that's the maturity of him advocating, him communicating effectively, him knowing how his coach is going to respond. That's the part that should impress people. For the kids out there, when you advocate for yourself, when you can communicate like that, that's the part that really, I think, is the part of the take-home message here, because you have an athlete that's doing that. And that feel, you can't just trust it, but you've got to give him a chance.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. If you're the coach, how much can you trust it? If the player, has a hard time being objective because, in his case, he wants to play, don't you have to balance that with other more objective ways to find out whether it makes sense to put him right back in now, or to stick with the plan that said, no, we're waiting, Anthony, 3 more minutes, 4 more minutes, because we do want to keep you right around 25 minutes, which was the goal, obviously, before the game began.
Yeah, I mean, look, you've got to have somebody who has the ability to be the bad guy. I mean, I was the bad guy a lot when I was there full-time with the team. So you've got to have somebody who's willing to be the bad guy. I think Coach Finch is. From everything that I know, I think he's a tough human being who, will do what he needs to. But there's also really good people in that organization, like David Hines and Chris Hines.
Yeah.
I mean, they're willing to speak up. And that, again, like when you have accountability, we don't have to get political, but ultimately, and I know, the best leaders have someone who's holding them accountable. You need accountability. And I think that they've built that with him where they can challenge him. There's no feelings. It's just business, right? It's the playoffs. There's no sadness. Hey, we want to win. We want to compete. Are you going to do this? And are you going to communicate?
It sounds like, to a large extent, what you're telling us on the basis of your experiences, though, is the X factor really can be the player. Because if you guys, on the basis of however you examine an injury or the progress made once a player is down for whatever reason, you may come to the conclusion that, hey, he's further along than we thought in the way we test this particular injury, the way we examine him and look at this. But that ultimately, if the player says, I'm not comfortable yet, I don't feel it yet, there's still something off, you're almost obligated at that point to back off. So the bonus or the X factor here is, even if you independently say, I'll sign, we're willing to sign off on this thing, if you don't have the player saying, I'm ready to get back out there, none of the rest of it matters, correct?
That's the relationship part. That's where, do you have somebody who can get that honest answer and be able to not have it sugar-coated and not have it be driven by emotion or competitiveness? It's, hey, what's the truth here? And that comes from experience. That comes from having people who understand their role. And I mean, I think one of the understated aspects to this is the third time that this team has made it to the second round. This is the third time they're going through this. I think Coach Finch was masterful the last 2 games. Two truly masterful performances from him, pulling strings, getting Terrence and others to play their best basketball. So when you have stuff like that, then you feel a little bit better. You feel like, hey, there's good feel, there's good experience. We've been through it. And for Anthony, he's been through 2 tough injuries prior to the knees getting hurt. So he's been through it. He's battled. It's been a little bit of a stop and start season. So I think that experience has taught him, don't take it for granted. Ask questions, be curious, be intelligent, be smart about what you're doing. That's really, really important.
I guess what I'm leading to is whether you're talking about crunch time, taking the big shot, or even how quickly you're willing to push it to come back from an injury, there's either an it factor or there isn't, because we all know there are players who talk tough about, I need the ball more, I want to take the shot, but they shy away at the key moment. And similar with an injury, I think these guys aren't all the same in that regard, and that does seem to be one of the things that separates Anthony, correct, is that there is he wants all of it. He may not always succeed, but he wants all of it.
He does, and I think he's also somebody who sees the capabilities in his teammates, right? I mean, obviously he's been, probably the biggest Jaden McDaniels supporter.
Yeah.
And now the whole city's behind Jaden because he's awesome, and he works his tail off, and he's a little more understated, and he does a lot of the dirty work. But Jaden McDaniels is really, really good, and he's very underappreciated across the NBA. So when you have someone like that, I remember when we interviewed Anthony for the draft, he said his favorite moment from his freshman year at Georgia was one of his teammates hitting a game winner, not anything that he did. And we believe that, and we saw that type of approach where he wants to lift up others, but he's also obviously not afraid of the moment and taking it himself, and he's confident in himself.
We are chatting with Dr. Robby Sikka, founder and CEO of Sports Medicine Analytics Research Team, who used to, of course, have major medical responsibilities, player health responsibilities with the Timberwolves as the vice president in that area in particular. I'm hoping you can help us have a better understanding regarding the relationship between the calf injury and the Achilles, because we now live in a world where the minute we hear anything about a calf injury, oh my God, we're thinking, well, that's the next thing right around the corner is Achilles. And it's come up again as recently as this week with Ayo Dosunmu, right, who sat for Game 6 against Denver, not available for Game 1 against San Antonio, is expected back tonight. I'm assuming you would tell me not all calf injuries are equal, but what is it? What have we learned about the relationship between one and the other? And then in this situation, beyond the player, how does the team and the medical people evaluate that was too soon for him to come back, but now it's okay? Is it a matter of how well he's moving, or is it that ongoing concern about one thing leading to the cataclysmic Achilles injury?
When I was there, we hired Jabbar Gillette, who oversees sports science and kind of all the player tracking. And he does a great job. He came from Houston of tracking players and understanding every single movement, how fast they move, how quickly they stop and start. All those things are really, really important. But this is something that, again, for the listeners out there who are parents, I want you guys to think about. We are seeing a rise in Achilles injuries, not just in basketball, but in football and baseball across all major sports. And we're seeing more soft tissue injuries in general. A lot of this is related to the explosiveness of athletes. Everybody throws 100+ miles an hour in baseball, right? Everybody is faster than ever. How many sub 4.4 guys did we have in the NFL that are D linemen that we never had before? So we have players who are faster than ever, jump higher, more explosive across the board. We also have a society, myself included, that sleep less, that are on our phones constantly, that don't rest and recover. Expecting an athlete to be more explosive than ever and not take more recovery time and rest more is kind of an insane theory. And basketball is now stop and start. There's really no cutting. You see very few ACLs in basketball now. You see far more hamstrings, calves, Achilles, because it's a stop and start league. Get to the rim, pull up for three. And what we're going to have to do now is start to figure out how we can prevent some of these injuries and get better at rehabbing them so athletes can come back faster. There's certainly a relationship between calf strains and Achilles injuries. There's certainly a relationship between ankle sprains and Achilles injuries. All these injuries have some relationship. And what one of the challenges is when we have youth athletes that are broken down from early sport specialization, many of the things that we do to force an athlete to play 6, basketball games on a Saturday. Why are we doing that in AAU basketball? And then you're expected to play again on Sunday. That's not real life. Like that's insane to do that to young athletes. So as a society, we have to ask these questions because nobody sleeps, nobody recovers. And again, for the listeners out there, I will say that one of the really unique things about Anthony Edwards that hasn't been out there is he really values sleep. That guy takes care of making sure that he gets good sleep every night, and I really respect that about him because he blocks off everything to make sure that he sleeps.
As you well know, this team for a number of years organizationally seemed to have been one of the teams that rejected, in general, the whole concept of quote-unquote load management. And that can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. I've lauded that, notwithstanding some of the things you're talking to us about, the reality of injuries and coming back too soon and all those sorts of things. How involved were you with the fact that this team seemed to reject a notion that grew to such a level in the league that obviously there are even, some rules changes made in terms of winning postseason awards that we want to encourage players to play more than they're playing, get to 65 games at minimum. Where were you in all of that discussion on load management?
I think that we put a pejorative sort of sense of, on a term like load management. Ultimately, what we should be doing is personalizing care across the board. I don't think it's fair to tie compensation to how many games you played, particularly for someone like Anthony, who came back early from just about every injury that he's had ever in his career. Kid's a warrior. Kid does everything he can to be out there. He does every single thing in terms of his recovery and training and testing to be out there. But what we have to recognize is that he's a unique athlete. He's different. And expecting, for example, a 32-year-old player to play 65 games versus a 22-year-old player, how is that fair? Because the average 32-year-old player misses how many games due to injury versus a 22-year-old. So these standards then become something that you just put something out there, and it's not necessarily apples to apples. Anthony worked his tail off, had super rare injuries this year, and he was able to come back faster than anyone else from all of those injuries. So I think he deserves a lot of credit. The rehab team deserves a lot of credit. The physical therapists and strength coaches who work with him to keep him safe when he does return deserve a lot of credit. And I think that the team values health because I know from all of the statistics that we would look at, games lost due to injury risk, they do a great job there of taking care of players. It's also now you're in the playoffs, and the intensity is just a completely different ballgame, which I'm sure everybody who's watching the games can speak to. These are super intense, super physical basketball games.
Last question for today. Appreciate the time. Do you expect, I don't know, Guardsy can tell me if there's been any kind of update. I'm curious to know what your feeling is. You may know, because you still got a lot of good connections and sources, that it's likely that it's another one of those games where maybe Anthony, they do try to keep him on a minute restriction, and kind of what goes into the decision of ratcheting it up from the initial plan. What do you expect tonight?
Typically what you see is an increase of 4 to 6 minutes per game. We know that he's been stop and start since March, so expecting more. What you're hoping is that, you can get to a situation where he can give you the crunch time minutes that he gave you, and he feels better and he's able to deliver there. What worried me watching the last game was what happens when you get to overtime, right? Because if that game had gone to overtime, then you start worrying, hey, fatigue is setting in. Yep. How do you then best manage it? So I would expect a 4 to 6 minute increase. I would say that, when you look at all of the different factors, the important thing is that you're protecting him and you're keeping him safe and you're making sure that he can get into the playoff rhythm that he needs to perform at the peak level that the team needs. I thought he felt out the game in game one. He felt where his teammates were. He tried to get them going. He didn't take shots early. I think you're going to see he's feeling good, through our text messaging and everything. He had that eye after the game. I think he's going to play really well tonight. I think the fans can get excited about this team continuing to ascend and play great. And, I'm even optimistic about a Wild win too, because I think
they need it.
It's going to be a fun spring here in Minnesota.
It's already even more fun than usual because they're both in it, which is historic.
Yep.
Have you ever had a player attempt purposefully to flunk a physical that you were giving them? Do you know the historical precedent for that in Timberwolves history?
Martell Webster?
Well, that's a good one. That might be another one.
That's a new age one.
That's a new age one. No, the original that I remember was when the Wolves traded Christian Laettner. It was to Atlanta, I think, and they got the key to the deal was they wanted a big man, and Atlanta had kind of a defensive center named Andrew Lang. His nickname was the Punisher. And as the story goes, Lang did not want to be here. He was not happy about it. He was devastated. And as the story goes, according to some of my sources, he started bringing up afflictions that, the Wolves didn't even know he might have had because he was trying so hard to flunk the physical. I just thought it's an interesting footnote in Minnesota Timberwolves lore.
Look, there's a ton of funny footnotes in Timberwolves lore. We've been through a lot as Wolves fans, but
no question.
There's a 30 for 30 that's missing out there.
There is.
And Dan, you're kind of the Wolves historian. You guys have done a great job of, putting all that together. Maybe that's something we need to get Johnny K and a few others in a room.
Yes.
And we can talk through it. It's a 30 for 30 that we should do for our own town.
Well, maybe if the club or when the club wins a title, that's it. Then you can really dig deep. And maybe people will even be more honest because at that point, statute of limitations is off on all the bad stuff because they're no longer bad. You know what I'm saying? Now they're championship caliber. Because it does feel like a different era, does it not? It's so contrary to what once existed, as you probably know pretty well, and Guardsy grew up with it too. It's almost astonishing, some of the stuff that Wolves fans and the organization endured back in the day compared to what it is now. A legitimate, stable, adult, well-run organization.
They didn't win a playoff series until I was 22 years old, 23 years old.
Think about it.
So, my 7-year-old, Gia, she certainly has seen many playoff games at this point and seen wins. So don't take it for granted. Appreciate this. And for the fans out there, appreciate the athlete that Anthony is, because again, he is a special individual who wants to bring a championship here. It should be really fun for us to enjoy this. He loves Minnesota. He loves this community. This is, I grew up here. We love when people love us. That's a Minnesota thing,
yes,
right?
It is, no question.
So this should be fun for us because we've got someone who really wants to do it right for us.
Enjoy tonight's game. Thanks for the extended conversation. It's good to get caught up, and I'm glad you're doing well.
Likewise, guys. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you. Dr. Robby Sikka, formerly Vice President of Player Health and Operations for the Minnesota Timberwolves, now Big Shot founder and CEO of Sports Medicine Analytics Research Team. That is a mouthful. Thank God we don't have business cards anymore because I don't think the cards are big enough to include that entire title.
Man. Playoff basketball is heating up. Carboni's Pizzeria wants to fuel your Game 2 watch party tonight. Stop by one of 30-plus locations. Score delicious pizza. Get ready for the playoff grind. Order today at carbonispizza.com.
Bumper seal of approval coming up next segment. Don't forget, we've got Russo Radio top of the hour. Kessler yet to come as well. The most unique excuse I think I might have ever heard offered up by a player attempting to explain the challenges of guarding another player. Have you heard about this one?
I don't think I have.
You're familiar with Jalen Brunson?
Yes.
Outstanding scorer for the New York Knicks, who've been on fire
Yep.
ever since they discovered they got Karl Anthony Towns on the team. to run a lot of their offense through him rather than just Brunson bouncing the ball.
Do we think Jaden will guard Brunson or Cat in the finals?
Be a nice. The angles right themselves.
Yeah.
If those two teams meet,
I
right?
wonder.
Be outstanding. Are you familiar with a Philadelphia 76er named Kelly Oubre Jr.?
Sure.
After game one, in which I think Jalen, did he have over 40? He had over 30.
He had over 30 for sure. They were cooking.
For sure.
They won by like 50.
Oubre was asked about the challenges of guarding Jalen Brunson. Obviously, he has a big head. So it's definitely tough to guard him with his head and all that. Yeah, I mean, he can whip me all he wants with his braids, but you're not getting free like that. So he mentions the size of his cranium a couple times, and then he says beyond that, the braids are he's viewing, I guess, as an extension of the head. But I guess I'd never really thought about the size of Jalen Brunson's head being one of his greatest scoring assets.
Now it's all I'm going to see.
It's all any of us are going to see.
Now.
How good is that?
I'd never thought about the braids. The only time I ever thought about hair coming into play was when, like, an NFL player would have the braids coming out of the back of the helmet.
Yes.
You could, like, pull them from behind to try to tackle. I never thought of them as a stiff arm in a sense.
Well, here's the thing, though. Here's what's weird. I can make the argument that Oubre's hair is longer. It's not in braids, but is longer than Brunson's.
He does have a little bit of flow, doesn't he?
He's got two colors. Black on one side and almost like a dark red on the other. Yeah. So there it is, the big head defense. I mean, what do you want me to do? It's got a big cranium, and it's difficult to guard somebody with a big cranium like that. How good is that?
Sounds like Marty Wexler III.
It does.
He would be on
100%
that.
True.
Yep.
I'll give you the short version now of the latest anonymous athletic, in this case, basketball poll of players.
Right. And I did not look, even though I was tempted when you told me about this.
In this case, I think they convinced 161 players to participate in this anonymous poll in various categories, underrated, overrated, coaches, etc.
Oh, boy.
That's about, I think, half in the league. That's a pretty good, I think it's the most they've ever had, and you're allowed to do your votes anonymously for all the obvious reasons. There's several categories worthy of discussion. I will just get to one. Well, maybe two. Maybe three. Best defensive player. Who do you think won it?
Wemby.
Wemby wins it at 41%, which is about to be expected.
Yep.
You care to...
Even with the goaltends.
Even with the goaltends. We'll get to that during the seal of approval. You want to take a guess on where Rudy ranks? Wemby is 1. Where is Rudy Gobert, according to this anonymous players poll, best defensive player in basketball?
How many players are listed in the poll?
I think
like a ballpark?
20. Maybe even 25. I think 20.
I'm going to say he's like 19 or not even on there.
15th.
Yeah.
I think I kind of alerted you to where it was going.
Yeah.
Wemby had 41%. Rudy Gobert finished 15th at 2.0%. How about most overrated player?
Yeah, we need to get to
in basketball.
We need to get back to these.
The most overrated player in basketball. You'll never guess who won it. I didn't guess it, but maybe you can.
Most overrated
single basketball player in basketball. And it was a pretty dominant performance. Not as dominant as Wemby.
What conference?
West.
Chet.
No.
Oh, that's just me.
Sengun.
Oh, that would have been my guess.
Seriously?
Oh, I've been on that for 2 years.
Yeah, he is.
I don't get it. And he did not have a good playoffs, and now his trade value to get a Giannis trade is nothing.
Right, but behind Sengun as the most overrated player, not in the Western Conference, but in the NBA, Rudy Gobert.
Yeah, I mean, these guys are predictable.
It's all become kind of a comedy. It's kind of become farce. Yep. He's in second place at 8.6%. Most
I'd love to know how many of these players are still playing, by the way.
Well,
like the best defenders, like all of it. Probably not as many.
There's a couple other categories we'll get to. Let's stay on schedule. Let's get to the bumper seal of approval. Kessler yet to come. Russo Radio. Top of the hour. Are the Minnesota Wild in decent trouble? Are they in horrific trouble? Is it over? Is it fixable? And who starts in the net when the series resumes in Minnesota Saturday night? All that with Russo coming up in about, 20 minutes.
Women's soccer when Minnesota Aurora returns for their home opener on May 21st, 7 p.m. at TCO Stadium in Eagan. Tickets for all games on sale now at mnaurora.com.
Most impressive coach beside your own, according to the anonymous NBA players poll. 161 players polled by The Athletic. Most impressive coach besides your own. Any predictions on who won it? Take a stab at it?
Dagno?
Close. I think he was 2 or 3.
Okay.
Missoula finished first.
People like Joe.
Finchie does not show up on the poll at all.
That's fine. That's right where we like to be.
Is not mentioned on this poll. Perhaps, because I know he listens to the show and podcasts it a lot, we can make him feel a little bit better by issuing him...
It's the Bumper to Bumper Seal of Approval.
Anybody who listens to this show knows generally my position on referee whining is pretty negative. But I will grant one exception, especially after victory, but it doesn't always have to be after victory. When you offer up a series of comments that has longtime NBA media observers like Michael Wilbon linking Finchie to the all-time ref-baiting greats, including Pat Riley and Phil Jackson,
the Zan Master.
You deserve and get and should receive the bumper seal of approval.
Wilbon was gushing about him.
That was, that's what I was just saying.
Yeah,
so
I know.
The part that I like is I do create a distinction generally between players and coaches. And I've always felt there's a piece of this that is a part of a smart coach's job. And it's an art that you can't abuse. You can't go to the well every 15 minutes. But you can occasionally put an idea into the minds of everybody, including the referees involved in the next game. When you muse the way he mused, almost saying it matter-of-factly, not pounding his fist, that Wemby should have been called for goaltending like 8, 9, 10, or 11 times. Now, he exaggerated it. It's not that many. I think there were 2 for sure. I might be convinced on a third. But doesn't matter. If you're the coach and you're trying to plant a seed, a la the Masters in the postseason, Pat Riley, and most assuredly, how many times did how often did Big Chief Triangle do it? And often, I think, with some effectiveness. And so anything you can do to link yourselves to those master NBA playoff psychologists on the coaching sidelines, that's a big win. And the bonus is you did it after a victory.
Yes.
Now, they didn't always do it after a victory, because occasionally it would be after a loss. But I do think, as I said earlier, it has even greater strength after a victory. And you got nothing to lose. It's not like the kind of thing that, Wemby's going to be really annoyed and now he's going to block 25 shots.
Right. Which came up, which people said.
Did they really?
Yeah.
I don't. I think he's blocking as many. He'll block as many as he can, regardless of what the coach says. But then you put it in the ref's head a little bit. Who knows? That might not have any impact on. I'm not saying it's going to tilt the balance of the series, but I most assuredly thought it was very well played, smartly played, and the key to it is the matter-of-fact way he delivered it.
Yes.
I thought it was not, because he wasn't screaming. He just laying it out, like, in a very matter-of-fact fashion. So we already kind of gave him the seal of approval yesterday for the way he handled Anthony's minutes restriction for Game 1. I thought that was masterful. Although Robby Sikka, Dr. Robby Sikka brought up a good point. That's the X factor is on these minute restrictions is what if the game goes into OT?
It's a little scary.
And then it gets a little bit funky. Do you actually have the cojones to pull him out of an overtime game in the Western Conference semifinals? Who's to say? Who knows? We have not yet had any word, have we, on whether he will start tonight? It sounds like Robby expects the minutes to go up 5. That's
what
he
did
hinted
he say,
at with
4 to
us.
6?
4 to 6, yeah.
But you could average out to 5?
Yes. So, but we have not heard anything officially yet, have we, on starting lineup tonight?
No. That's typically posted hour and a half, hour before the game.
So do you start the same lineup? If he doesn't start, do you start the same lineup you did in Game 1?
I do.
Or do you start the Sumu?
No.
I would think by the same logic, they'll probably say, you know what, this isn't too bad. We'll bring Anthony Edwards and Ayo DeSumo off the bench.
And
how's that?
I love it.
Yes.
And it's also that, and then you can get your Mike Conley minutes in there too. Mm-hmm. And he's a guy who started for 18 years. I know this year he came out the bench and his role was nothing after he came back here after being traded twice.
He started Game 1, didn't he?
Yes.
Yeah, right.
But my point is that's the whole, that's where he's comfortable.
Yes, that's true.
And I'm guessing it's like riding the bike for him to go out there. And obviously they're going to hunt him. Obviously he's going to give up some things defensively. But having Ayo come in against their second unit, I like that too. I like that as well. The other thing I liked about Finchie was gave Johnny Athletic great camera time today.
Yes, he did.
In his athletic hat, which we still don't have, even though we have multiple subscriptions.
We're never going to get one. Forget it. I've given up on it.
Asking Johnny Big Wallet, if he would take a 33% raise.
Yes.
That was how he linked it.
Yes.
And 33%.
Yeah.
I mean, would you take a 33% raise? And Johnny said, hoo, boy, I would. So I liked that too. Good Sports Center and first take time for Johnny today.
We'll wait until we'll get a little more into the poll. We'll have a short segment after. Well, actually, no, we might go long on Russo.
Yeah, we'll probably go right to Kessler.
Why don't we do this? Can you get ready the Kendrick Perkins sound I sent you? I think that's about 2.5 minutes. Is it maybe that or is it 3?
Because, about 2.
Okay, good. Even better. It's not that long then. If you're a Wolves fan, I'm assuming you're going to love what Kendrick Perkins had to say. Maybe you've already heard it. If you haven't, you need to hear it. The question is whether you are terrified by it. Because, in effect, he's going on the basis of one game, at least in this series, from utter and total belief in one team to utter and total, I guess you could say, coronation of a champion of the other team. Let's listen to, this is, I think, from yesterday, if I'm not mistaken, Kendrick Perkins on Wolves Spurs.
It was the player Anthony Edwards. And by the way, let me start off by telling him thank you. As a former player, thank you, because this is what we've been missing. This is what we've been wanting. The bar has been set. This man is out here playing on 2 hurt knees and told the doctors, I ain't hearing what y'all trying to talk about. I'm going out here and I'm going to hoop and push the line for his squad. And so when you think about what he done, going out there, he came in off the bench. He was efficient. He was effective. He played with passion. And I'm going to say this. I know I picked the San Antonio Spurs to win the championship. And I'm going to say right now that I was wrong. I was wrong. And I'm going to take all the heat that comes with it because they're not going to win this series. They're not going to win this series. I know when a team has that it factor. The Minnesota Timberwolves, they got that it factor. Those guys are on, I used to call the Miami Heat when they had Jimmy Butler and Bam, and they made their final run, the goons from Dade County. Well, these are the goons from Minnesota because they want all the smoke. I don't care if it's chimney smoke, cigarette smoke, or barbecue smoke. They are running to it. They're playing with a certain type of edge. They're playing with a certain type of tenacity. They have a certain level, a certain type of spirit that's going on through that locker room. And that damn Jaden McDaniels. We have a lot of great and good wing defenders around the league, but he is the best wing defender in the game. Here's what it's going to come down to, and this is why I'm jumping off the porch right now. Y'all can give me all the heat that y'all want. But the guards of the San Antonio Spurs, Stephon Castle, De'Aaron Fox, they are going to struggle tremendously in this series because these guys, the wings and the guard play and the defenders that the Minnesota Timberwolves have, especially Jaden McDaniels, they're not backing down.
By the way, for the record, first I guess I should ask, does that inspire you, arouse you, or terrify you?
Well, this is where playoff experience comes in, because I remember 2 years ago after the Wolves knocked off Denver in Game 2, the Doberman defense game, the Heat Pack game, and Stephen A. came on the next day and said,
yes, that's true.
I believe that the Timberwolves are going to win the NBA championship. And I allow that to excite me, but I also know how things can turn out. So it doesn't terrify me because of the playoff experience. I'm mostly enjoying the ride, like Robby Sikka told us to. So it doesn't terrify me. It does excite me, though.
The league's best defensive player, according to the anonymous poll, we mentioned Wembanyama easily first at 41%. A former Minnesota Timberwolves draft choice is number 2 in votes. Tied with Kawhi Leonard. His name is Chris Dunn.
I was going to say, it's got to be done, right? Clippers.
Then Scotty Barnes, 4%, along with, also at 4%, Jaden McDaniels and Wallace and Thompson, a couple of others. Most underrated player, Jaden finished in 14th place below Chris Dunn and a few percentage points ahead of Naz Reid, who also got a few votes. Hockey is next. Russo Radio. You have questions for him? 64686. That's the Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN